You know, there's a revolution happening at our borders, but it's totally invisible. It's not about building more fences or hiring more guards. It's about artificial intelligence. And in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and see how AI is quietly overhauling one of the oldest, most critical jobs in the world, customs.
So, why do we even need AI for this? Well, to get a sense of it, you've got to understand the scale we're talking about. 75 gigabytes. That's the amount of data a single customs agency was dealing with every single day. And that was back in 2018. Just imagine what that number looks like now. We're not talking about a few spreadsheets here. This is an absolute torrent of information.
And that really gets to the heart of the problem. Global trade is like a massive, non-stop fire hose of goods and data. It's just completely impossible to manually check every single container or read every document. So you end up with this classic needle-in-a-haystack situation. I mean, how on earth do you find that one illegal shipment hidden among millions of perfectly legitimate ones?
So how do we start to tackle that? Well, here's the roadmap for our journey today. We'll kick things off by unlocking the AI toolkit. Then we'll see it in action out on the front lines. After that, we'll get into the super important rules for using it responsibly, look at the blueprint for building a smarter border, and finally, we'll take a peek into the future of customs.
To even begin to handle this data tsunami, customs agencies are looking to AI. But let's be real. AI is one of those giant buzzwords that gets thrown around everywhere. So what tools are actually in the toolkit for a modern customs agency?
All right, first up, the big one, artificial intelligence, or AI. It's best to think of this as the huge umbrella term. It covers any system that can basically mimic human intelligence, things like reasoning, learning new things, and solving problems.
But under that big umbrella is where it gets interesting. You have machine learning, or ML, and this is really the engine driving most of modern AI. Instead of someone programming rigid if this, then that rules, ML systems learn patterns directly from massive amounts of data to figure out what might be a risk.
And then we have the latest and greatest evolution, generative AI. This is the stuff that doesn't just analyze data, it can actually create brand new content. It learns the patterns from, say, thousands of trade documents so well that it can then summarize, classify, or even write new reports about them. It's pretty wild.
So let's just quickly break down how they're different in the real world. Your standard machine learning is all about making predictions. Think of a spam filter in your email. Deep learning takes that a step further. It can spot super complex patterns, like finding a tiny anomaly in an X-ray scan. And then you've got generative AI, the creator, which can write a whole new report based on everything it's learned. But you notice the one thing they all have in common? They are all incredibly hungry for data.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how does this all work when the rubber meets the road? Let's go to the front lines and see how these tools are actually being used right now.
I mean, it's one thing to talk about algorithms and data sets, but what does this really look like in a chaotic, busy customs office? Well, for that, we can look at one of the biggest and most complex customs operations on the planet, China's.
Right now, the General Administration of China Customs is in the process of developing, get this, 62 distinct AI models. We're not talking about some little pilot program here. This is a massive, full-scale technological overhaul. But here's the thing, they aren't just letting the machines take over. They're being very, very smart about how they do it.
And their approach is called Human in the Loop, or HITL. Honestly, this is the key to the whole thing. The goal isn't to replace the experienced customs officer. The goal is to give that officer a kind of superhuman assistant that can sift through millions of data points in the blink of an eye.
Here's how it plays out, step by step. First, the AI crunches all the data and flags shipments it thinks are high risk. Second, and this is important, it doesn't just block them. It makes a recommendation to a human officer. And finally, the officer makes the final call, using all their years of expertise to either agree with the AI or override it. It's really the best of both worlds, machine speed paired with human judgment.
Of course, when you have a tool this powerful, it raises some serious questions. Like, how do you prevent mistakes? How do you make sure it's fair? And that brings us to the absolute need for some guardrails.
So here's the thing you have to remember. AI isn't some perfectly neutral, objective brain. No way. It learns from the data we feed it, with all our human flaws included. So, if your old data shows that you unfairly targeted shipments from one country, the AI is just going to learn to do the same thing, but faster. Or maybe you only train it on data about luxury cars. Well, it's going to be clueless when a suspicious container of cheap toys comes along.
And sometimes the AI gets so good at memorizing the old stuff that it completely falls apart when a totally new situation pops up.
So how do we manage these risks? Well, right now, the world is still trying to figure that out, and two big approaches are taking shape. You've got the EU, which is creating formal, legally binding rules based on how risky an AI system is. And on the other hand, you have the US, which is taking a more flexible, voluntary approach to try and encourage innovation. They both want to get to the same place, fairness and trust, but they're taking very different roads to get there.
But, regardless of which country you're in or which strategy you use, one principle is absolutely central. And it's captured perfectly in this quote from a World Customs Organization report. The decision-making responsibility still rests with human officers, who are accountable under the law. At the end of the day, the AI is a tool. The human is in charge.
Okay, so we know the tech. We get the need for rules. But what does it actually take for a customs agency to pull this off? Let's look at the practical, real-world blueprint for getting it done.
First things first, you can't just plug in an AI and hope for the best. You have to prepare the fuel, and that fuel is data. And this is the, let's say, less glamorous part of the job, but it's absolutely essential. We're talking about cleaning up messy records, standardizing different currencies and units, and turning blurry scans into usable text. And most importantly, you have to label all your old data. You have to tell the AI, hey, this shipment was fraud, and this one was totally fine, so that it has something to learn from. Without this foundation, the whole project is a bust.
And this chart really reveals a surprising truth about what it takes to adopt AI. The actual algorithm, the software itself, that's just a tiny piece of the whole puzzle. Look at the real costs. 35% is just for the infrastructure, the hardware. Another 30% is for that massive data management effort we just talked about. It's not about buying a piece of software. It's about transforming the entire organization.
So, we've got the tech, we know the risks, and we've seen the blueprint. What does this all add up to? What is the actual future of the border itself going to look like?
I think the key takeaway is this. AI isn't just another small upgrade, like getting a faster computer. It's a catalyst. It's a fundamental transformation of how customs agencies do their job. It's a shift away from just reacting and doing random inspections to being proactive, data-driven, and truly risk-based. It changes the entire game.
And that leaves us with one final and really important question to think about. As AI increasingly becomes the new gatekeeper for global trade, how do we, all of us, make sure that this incredibly powerful tool remains fair, transparent, and accountable to everyone? That is the challenge and the promise of what lies ahead.